3 Australian anti-whaling protesters are reportedly set to be released from a Japanese ship. The men illegally boarded the whaling ship at the weekend.
Now, Japanese media are reporting the protesters won't be charged and they'll be handed over to Australian authorities. But it's yet to be decided just when and where that transfer will take place.
Well, to try and get further details, our North Asia correspondent Mark Willesee joins us on the line from Tokyo. Mark, great to talk to you this morning. What do we know? What is the latest in terms of what we're hearing from Japanese officials?
Well, as mentioned, this first broke in the Japanese media late last night. The ABC here in Tokyo then contacted the Foreign Ministry, and they did confirm that Jeffrey Tuxworth, Simon Petterfy and Glenn Pendlebury will be released. They will not be charged with any offence. The big problem now is how to get them back, because the boat they're on, the Shonan Maru 2, the whaling security ship, is steaming south. It's following the Steve Irwin, which is the Sea Shepherd Conservation Movement's flagship, as it goes to hunt the whalers itself. So we've got a bit of a logistical problem for the Australians in terms of getting them off the ship.
Why do you think Japanese authorities moved so quickly to agree to their release?
Well, officially at least, the Japanese are saying they've agreed to release these activists because they weren't violent, they didn't damage the ship while boarding it, and unlike Peter Bethune, the New Zealand activist a couple of years ago who was detained and taken back to Japan after scaling this same ship, they weren't carrying any knives. It's lucky for these activists that they aren't going back to Japan, because it would have taken many weeks for them to make it back, because obviously the Shonan Maru 2 is heading to the whaling grounds for the annual so-called scientific whaling hunt. And I think that's the unofficial reason the Japanese also want to get rid of these three men, is it's going to take weeks and weeks down there in the whaling fields. Then it would take weeks and weeks to take them back to Japan. Then they would be probably remanded before a court case. That could take several months. And it's very likely that the court would give them a suspended sentence, because it's only a trespassing offence, and they'd just be deported. So the Japanese probably think it's just easier to get rid of them now.
Now, of course, the Australian government yesterday were working feverishly behind the scenes, very much through the diplomatic channels, because, of course, they boarded the boat in what's considered to be international waters. Do you think that work behind the scenes also paid off? And also, I guess, the very good relationship that Japan and Australia have, other than on the whaling issue?
Very much so. There was a bit of a frenzy of diplomatic activity yesterday, and I think that did contribute to the release. But also, again, I think the Japanese also wanted to wash their hands of these men. This ship is involved in a pursuit of a Sea Shepherd boat. They've got better things to do at the moment than to have 3 extra mouths to feed on board. But certainly the good relationship between Australia and Japan probably did pay off. And we've heard from the Japanese already this year that one of their goals in foreign policy and trade policy this year is a free trade agreement with Australia. Now, while both countries have been very successful in keeping the whaling dispute on a separate track and out of any other negotiations on trade, for example, it's probably just a fly in the ointment they didn't need this year, especially as Japan has stated, as I said, that it really wants to promote that free trade agreement with Australia this year.
And your feeling from the authorities, as you say now, the issue is how they get off the Shonan Maru 2. Is it going to be up to Australia to get them off, or up to the Sea Shepherd themselves to try and rescue them?
I think it'll be a direct negotiation between the Japanese authorities and the Shonan Maru 2, and also the Australian authorities. It has to be remembered that the Shonan Maru 2 is steaming south as we speak. Every hour it gets further away from Australia and closer to the Antarctic whaling grounds. So that's going to be a big logistical issue for the Australians. Obviously a lot of catch-up to be done there. These two boats, the Steve Irwin and the Shonan Maru 2, which is pursuing it, are moving at quite a decent pace. So it's going to be a major logistical nightmare for the government to try and get these 3 activists off.
Mark Willesee in Tokyo, thanks so much for that update this morning.
Thank you.